Welcome to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. It's the show geared toward keeping you up to speed with the latest auto news, event coverage, and expert industry insight. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Avery and John Kraman.
Hey, and welcome to another On the Move. We're so glad you've joined us today. My name is Matt Avery. I'm executive producer of The Transmission, and joining me as always is co-host John Kraman, lead TV commentator for Mecum Auctions on NBCSN. John, today we are recording on site from Mecum's Kissimmee auction, the world's largest collector car auction. Week 2 is in full swing. Lots of excitement going on. This show has a lot of focus on Florida, not only the auction here, but also some excitement on the horizon. In segment 2, you and I took a very special field trip down to Punta Gorda in Muscle Car City. That is the collection of Rick Treworgy. After a lifetime of putting together one of the best gatherings of classic General Motors muscle, he is having Mecum Auctions auction all of it off at no reserve next week. You and I sat down with Rick to find out a little bit more about the collection and even some of Rick's future plans. And then in segment 3, you and I sat down with Chicken George Boswell, one of the longtime bidders assistants, a well-known staple here at Mecum Auctions. We found out a little bit more about him, including his time on the very well-known TV show Big Brother, and then his path to Mecum.
Yep, that is going to be a lot of fun. I just got to say, Matt, really been very energizing being here at Kissimmee doing these podcasts from the world's largest collector car auction. Of course, we'll be reporting on the success and the results of this auction as we move forward within the next couple of weeks. But so far, all the pieces are in place for a monster event occurring here. Very, very happy about that.
And looking out to the rest of the calendar year, John, a couple minor tweaks to our existing schedule, a couple reshuffling of some dates, as well as news of a brand new event.
Yep, all ever changing. Some news to report, Matt, is the traditional motorcycle auction held in January every year has been moved because of the virus, of course, to new dates in Las Vegas, April 28th through May 1st. That's 5 big days. So I had a chance to talk to Greg Arnold about that back in the office before I headed down here to Kissimmee. And the feedback from his consigners on that have been all 100% positive. Looking forward to holding the world's largest motorcycle auction, as always. And very exciting, a brand new auction venue, an all-new location, Tulsa, Oklahoma, being added to the Mecum schedule. That is going to run June 10th through the 12th. That is 3 days. Very exciting there. And I also do want to mention that our next collector car consignment auction coming up really just around the corner, Glendale, Arizona. That's the Phoenix area. And that will be 3 days, Matt. That's March 18th through the 20th. If you're interested in consigning to that great auction, this will be year 3 for that event, by the way. Plenty of information at mecum.com on that.
Something else that you can find there, John, is a brand new digital copy of the Mecum Monthly magazine. This one, the February edition. John, and you're at the Redline column. What were you writing about this time?
Oh, it's a kind of a cool title, Matt. I'm kind of proud of it. The 400 Horsepower Club. And Mike, you say, well, what is that about? I'll give you just a snapshot of it. 2021 Mustang GT, Challenger RT, and Camaro LT1 are all manual shift, entry-level V8 offerings with base prices in the mid $30,000 range from those 3 great pony cars. So folks that kind of have an interest in hearing my thoughts and a little bit of a comparison for that, once again, mecum.com for my monthly column at the Redline. Now, how about you?
This time I was looking at the Alfa Romeo 4C Spider 33 Stradale Tributo. The 4C is already a great little roadster, and the special edition has a lot of great heritage packed into it, celebrating a Alfa Romeo supercar of the 1960s. Looks like a lot of fun and definitely looks to be a future collectible. Now, John, turning to the world of new car news, a lot of buzz surrounding electric cars.
Well, a good indication that General Motors is all in, as they have said that they have, Matt, is the recent announcement of a brand new logo for General Motors, which is intentionally intended to reset the image of their direction. And now the new GM logo, quite attractive, actually, clearly has an electric plug in the M part of that GM logo. And I think that tells the world that electric propulsion, it's going to be around a while.
Yeah, now from a design standpoint, it is very contemporary, very modern, and it is replacing the long-running square with the blue background that General Motors has used. Whether or not the diehards and the faithful embrace this new one, really only time will tell.
Yeah, and then staying in that same vein for just a moment, there are more and more states coming on board all the time, targeting the year 2035 as their target. There's nothing confirmed yet, as their target date, where they will be saying that their plan is to be no longer selling ICE engine-powered cars, internal combustion engine cars. That doesn't mean these vehicles are being banned or they're not going to be able to be operated or be able to buy gas. We don't want to start that. But as the transition to electric power continues to chug along, that's about, 14 years from now is their target date, and we will keep everybody posted on that. Hey, I know you had a chance, Matt, to take a look online at a pretty important new vehicle reveal from our friends at FCA.
Yeah, John, one of the brands that has had just an incredible 2020, and they're kicking off 2021 very strong, has been Jeep.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this many times on the show, all kinds of new offerings, and that momentum has not slowed. They are now going to offer for 2021 a Grand Cherokee L. It's a 3-row offering, something that probably was on the horizon, really kind of in the background because of all the other news that they had. And then all of a sudden, with the new year, they brought it out. It looks really sharp. And one of the things that you immediately identified is that family resemblance to another new vehicle that they have coming out, the Grand Wagoneer.
Right. And it's also important to note that they have made the mention that the traditional, the conventional, the current generation Grand Cherokee, of course, is a 2-row. That is going to remain in production while they do the launch of the all-new 3-row, which will eventually be downsized slightly to a 2-row version down the road. So I look forward to seeing my first of the new Grand Cherokees, in addition to the Grand Wagoneer on the roads as well.
Mecum Auctions is proud to bring you On the Move with Matt Avery and John Kraman. For more on the world of collector cars, head over to mecum.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Matt and I are really on the move today. We are in Punta Gorda, Florida at the Muscle Car City Museum, and just could not be more excited and more pleased to have with us here the guy that put that together. Rick Treworgy is here, and this is noteworthy and very important because after literally a lifetime of collecting cars, Rick has decided to move on to other aspects of his life, which we'll be talking about here today, and everything is selling at no reserve, and that's going to be on January 22nd, 23rd, actually the week after the Kissimmee auction. Bidders that are pre-registered for Kissimmee can come right over, and they're automatically registered. There's be about 200 cars and a ton of memorabilia. Mecum.com for lots of information on that. But for more, let's talk to the man himself. Rick, thank you for taking some time. I know it's crazy busy here, but we really appreciate you taking time to talk to us. So let's go right back to the beginning. You know, we're all car guys and lots of car gals out there too, and we all have a dream about a collection like what you've put together, but not all of us have the capabilities. It takes a lot of moving parts to be able to do something like what you've done here. When did you begin to think that taking your love and your passion of cars and turning it into what is now known as the best collection of General Motors cars spanning over 100 years?
I believe I had the wish to do this at a pretty young age. Never knew I would do it. It was just kind of a dream that I thought might happen one day. I had owned tremendous amount of cars even back when I was in high school and learned to restore them and stuff. My father was an International Harvester truck dealer, so I had the option of always being able to use the shop after they closed it up at 5 o'clock. It could become mine, provided I had it cleaned by the next morning. So,
Now, fair enough.
Now, Rick, give us an idea of your collecting strategy as you went along. Was there certain cars that you had to have, or was it just whatever caught your eye?
Yeah, originally it was all about whatever the most performance thing General Motors had built. If I had a Chevelle, it would be a 396 375 or a 454 or 450 horse and the LS6 or things like that. So I was after the performance and 4-speed in them. That to me was a muscle car, and same with the Camaros and the Chevy 2s and all of that. Whatever the bad boy boy the group was. And that's all I did for probably the first 20 years was those cars, because that was what appealed to me the most. My venue changed as I started becoming more commercial, because everybody loves the cars they grew up with. So if you have some of the older stuff, it makes people like your whole collection, where if you just had what I like, it wouldn't necessarily happen. So I've been into old, I always liked old commercial stuff too, which doesn't fit with muscle cars, but I just love the old commercial vehicles.
Rick, Matt and I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time walking around and look at the group of cars, and we talk about it being all GM. I did notice one non-General Motors car. Maybe there's another one, but I noticed a Willis street rod that was out there. Is there anything else that's not General Motors in the group?
No, they're pretty much, if they're not General Motors, they're General Motors powered. If you lift the hood on that, that's a 396 in that little Jeep.
Okay.
There's quite a few of them that are, I've put LS6s in a few of the early model Chevelles and things like that. I'm here pleasing myself. I'm not kidding anybody. I enjoy the cars and I enjoy playing with them. So if they look like a number match car, they will be. But I have Resto-mod beside them, and I like one as well as the other.
Right outside your office, Matt and I had a chance to take a peek at a 1959 Cadillac convertible that looks like a finely high-quality 100-point restored car from the outside and the interior, but under the hood, that's packing a big surprise.
Yeah, that car's LS powered, which it drives more like a late model car than what it used to when it was original, and that's back to please myself, I guess. I like that, Resto-mod type car as much as a stock one.
So certainly the group absolutely chock full of performance versions of Camaros, Novas, Chevelles, full-size cars, very, very strong and heavy on Corvettes as well. Some Resto-mods, some other General Motors muscle cars, 442s, GTOs, a little bit light on Buicks. I'm just kind of curious, why isn't Buick as prominently featured in your group as some of the other GM makes?
The reason I had quite a few Buicks, and I was trying to put them together. Buicks are really hard to find in a 4-speed. They're out there, but they're not as plentiful as they are in the other cars. And that's what got me where when I moved to this building, I probably sold 6 or 7 Buicks, and that was all I had in the collection at that time. Most of those were automatics, not all of them, but most of them. And I kind of decided I wasn't going to be able to complete that the way I wanted to. I like having the whole series of cars instead of just a car. So.
Take us back. What were some of your personal automotive influences, including some of the early cars that you owned and drove?
Well, I started out, when my first cars were kind of a choice between myself and my parents what I could have.
Yeah.
As I got a little older, I started buying the performance Chevrolets. I had a few Fords and Mopars along the way, but my love for the Chevrolet comes from the fact that you can buy your parts interchangeability is just infinite on those cars. You can go in a 10 or 12 year span and the same distributor work in every one of them and things like that. So it's a lot less expensive to work on a Ford or a Mopar. It's a lot less expensive to work on a Chevrolet than it is a Ford or a Mopar if you're looking for power out of them. And that was, as a kid, I was more interested in power than I'm amazed if maybe some of my cars in the early days are still around. This may be my penance for that.
Now, you mentioned that you will make some changes to the cars, Rick. Do you prefer to buy vehicles mostly done, or will you undertake restorations as well?
I used to do restorations. Now I'm looking for cars that are pretty well done. I like the theory you can't pay too much. You can just buy them too soon. I want a nice car, and so I don't care if I pay a little too much for it because I'll have it long enough that it'll come around. I do like, in today's world, I like 4-wheel disc brakes on a car and a few things like that. Some of them I like the air ride on. I'm not a big fan on everything, but some of them I like that. But I will make changes to my cars if it suits me. And a lot of times, if you're not a matching number car, you can actually increase the value of it by giving it some modern upgrades.
So going back to the early days of the museum, the collection, how long would you say that you've been collecting cars here, reaching its peak right now? And what were some of the early cars of that first wave?
Well, I think I built up a personal collection of probably 100 cars before I was to the point that I would call myself a museum. Even when I was a kid, I would own 3 cars at a time. I'd have my driver and I'd have 2 I was building. And I might change my driver when I got the 2 I was building done, but they were built to be sold. And that always added on to the collection. And it's something about I don't think hoarding's a word, but I just liked having multiple cars, and I enjoyed saving them and making something special out of something that was just...
So what were some of the cars that you recall that have been in the collection, for maybe 25, 30 years? Has it been that long?
Oh, there's some a lot longer than that. I probably had some of these cars 40 years. But the majority of them, they changed over time. As if you have a car for 10 years and it's around, once in a while I'll call 2 or 3 and then buy one that's nicer than those and things like that. And so the collection does change if I plan on doing it or not. It just does. I'll walk around and I'll get pressure to sell a few, and I will. Most of the time people come in, I won't sell my cars. I didn't do this for money, and I don't like to think of them like that, because you could easily sell everything you got. And easy sell your best cars first always,
Right.
One of the vehicles that really caught my eye, Rick, out there is a Z16 Chevelle, arguably one of the forerunners of Chevy's 1960s muscle car development. What's the story about that car? How did you come to acquire it?
I actually bought that through a Mecum auction.
We didn't know that, by the way. So good. Thank you.
A lot of my cars in here came from Mecum. That car is special because they build it in real low quantity. There's 201 of those built. It was actually the same motor that you have in your 65 Corvette. They just dropped it down to a hydraulic cam and smaller heads, because they didn't want to take any chance on outrunning Corvette. But the low numbers make it was a GTO eater, and that's what Chevrolet had in mind. And they did a good job with the car. A lot of people think that 375 is the same motor was in the 66. It's absolutely not. It's a completely different animal. The whole drivetrain is, for that matter. So, but it's just a pretty special car. I was older and could afford to buy that when I did, and it's just something I'd wanted most of my life. When it was time, it was time.
That's one of the most fascinating cars in the group, but I got to tell you, the one car that jumped out at me, in fact, it popped right out of the sea of 200 cars here, 1966 Pontiac 2+2, red interior, 421, HO, tri-power, 4-speed, 8-lug wheels. Boy, it's really got the look, but it's got a GTO, what looks to be a GTO hood scoop on it, like a 65 through 67 GTO hood scoop. But I looked underneath it to see if it looked like it had been grafted on there, and it looked like it was factory installed. And I'm an old Pontiac guy. I don't remember ever seeing that. What was the story on that?
Well, supposedly Pontiac built 4 of those hoods, and I have never been able to figure out exactly what cars they went on, but they are on. There's 5 of them out there. I'd never seen one when I saw the car. That's what made me buy the car, let alone that big car. That's got the same power. You put the 420, the bigger engine in that car with the 4-speed, and it'll run with your GTO. So it's a pretty unique piece all on its own. I love the 8-lug wheels and stuff like that. Right. So, that's a real good car. Should have been a keeper.
Rick, fill us in on the development of Muscle Car City. When you moved into this gorgeous space, what was your thought for the overall design and the look and feel?
Every one of these buildings I've retrofitted. Originally, I bought the Walmart down the road. About 4 or 5 years ago, I bought this shopping center and decided that I would sell the Walmart and move it down here. Same thing as I'm doing now. I should have retired, and I don't want to, so it was like a Band-Aid thinking that I could do this and it would be easier, but it's the same amount of work to run it here as it was there. But both my buildings were retrofits, so the best I could do, I did everything I could do to make that building not look like a Walmart, and did a pretty good job. Once you get inside it, you could get lost, just feel like you're in a big city or something. But it would be easier had I been able to just build the facility. But in today's world, when you start needing, that was 100,000 feet of building, and to build it versus to retrofit one, it's more economical to retrofit a building.
Over the years that you've been open here, Rick, can you talk about just some of the variety of guests that have come through, as well as some of the events that you've hosted?
We've had people from all over the world, and there's times of the year you get Brazil and South America, and there's times of the year you're getting UK. There's times Sweden, stuff like that. And they all their holidays seem to all correspond. Not different than ours, I guess. We go places where it's cooler in the winter, where anybody that lives in the winter comes to Florida, so and vice versa. The whole world seems to work like that, and so everybody in different areas seem to vacation about the same times of the year, it seems like.
Well, as the museum collection of around 200 unbelievably great cars, as that's kind of winding to a close, take us into your world. What are you going to do? You're still very vibrant. You've still got a lot of stuff on your plate. What do you got going on past this?
Well, my first project, we're building a big commercial project in Port Charlotte on the harbor. We're going to have Harpoon Harry's restaurant is going to have a new home, and that's going to require a lot of time. So the first year, I'll probably be majority doing that. I am keeping 50 cars at home just to keep me entertained. So if I have time off, I have something to play with out there.
And it's worth noting that while the collection is moving on, Rick is still keeping the facility, including the on-site restaurant, Stingray's Bar and Grill. That will remain open, and Rick will be using the outside grounds as a gathering place for the local car community.
Absolutely. I own this entire shopping center, so it will be, though this space will get occupied by something else, the restaurant will stay in place. We'll try to do Friday night cruises and swap meets and things like that. Everybody likes to have that. There aren't many places you can put that many things together car-wise, and so it's a good facility to do it, and I feel loyal to the people that were loyal to me while I was here, and I want to continue that as long as I possibly can.
Well, let's just go ahead and close with, I'm going to represent all the car guys of the world and just really give a nod of respect to what Rick has been able to do, taking and corralling and keeping these cars in pristine condition over such a long period of time, honestly and frankly, has preserved and kept these cars for future generations. That is going to be your legacy as these cars start to roll away here on January 22nd and 23rd. But, did you ever look at it, as a final question, did you ever look at this as an investment, or was it strictly passion-driven?
It was strictly passion-driven. I never thought, I never thought of it as money, because if you did, you couldn't build the collection. You'd always be selling your best cars, and you wouldn't be a museum. So I've had many opportunities to sell individual cars, and I will not do it. So this is a big step for me too. Doing it, bringing it to an end like this.
Well, we can only imagine that. I'm sure with all the excitement, there's probably a tinge of bittersweetness connected to seeing such a fabulous collection go. On behalf of John and I, we wish you the very best, Rick, in whatever your future endeavors include. It's been such a thrill to be on site, taking in Muscle Car City. What a fantastic group of cars. All of it will be offered at no reserve next week. If you want to learn more, head over to mecum.com. Rick, thanks so much.
All right, I sure appreciate you guys coming.
Don't adjust that dial. On the Move will be right back. Our program is proudly presented by Mecum Auctions, the world's largest collector car auctions. Now back to Matt and John.
Hey, Matt, we have got a very, very special guest, and I'm going to predict we are going to have some fun today. Loyal, long-term viewers of Mecum Auctions know are very colorful and are very personable and very entertaining. Bidder assistant George Boswell, well known as Chicken George, and what he has agreed to do today, we're at Kissimmee, is to take a little bit of time away from his duties on the auction floor and come in and talk to us, really covering two different topics. Number one, we're going to hear a little bit about George, his beginning as a very well-known celebrity and cast member on Big Brother. I want to hear some stories about that. And then, of course, his evolution into Mecum. And then we'll step in and talk to a little bit about the nuts and bolts of what it's like to be a bidder assistant at Mecum Auction. So let's go ahead and welcome Chicken George Boswell to the show. Thank you so much for coming in, man.
Wow, what an intro, John. I am totally impressed with this, okay? Go on ahead. I'll take all more that you want to give me.
Where did it begin for you, George? When did you realize that maybe your personality might be suited for a wider audience? And, of course, we're going to talk about how you got involved with Big Brother. Fill us in on that, man.
Okay, it goes back in another life, I call it. My family had a hot tar roofing business where we roofed commercial buildings. Okay, what ended up happening was my daughter seen an ad in a newspaper. They were looking for like very outgoing people that do different things, everything else like that there. It was in the Rockford Register Star, my hometown newspaper, because I live in Rockford, Illinois.
As I do.
Okay, so it said you had to do these certain things. So I went on ahead and we printed it up. You had to print off the internet. Of course, I didn't know how to run the internet, so I had to do the computer thing. They helped me, because this is the year 2000, okay? We're just coming on it. So I printed out the application. She goes, Dad, just fill these things out. And I go, okay, but I said, I'm a roofer. What would anybody want with me? Okay, and so I paused and I says, but let's do some fun. So let's answer some questions. So they would ask you questions like, okay, like what's your favorite TV show? Well, of course, Beavis and Butthead at that time was my favorite show.
Figures.
And I put down like a Live Date, the Beverly Hills Billies. I even think I throw Fred and Barney, the Flintstones in there, okay? So I go on ahead, and then you have to make up a tape. If you wanted, they wanted to see what you look like. So I went on ahead.
Sizzle reel.
Yeah, and you had to get them giant cameras that was like huge, okay? So my sister-in-law had one, so we made up a tape in the backyard of my house. Okay, hi, I'm George, and everything else like that. Had a little dog in there and everything else like that there. Made the tape up, put it on top of my refrigerator along with the application to the show, okay? This is reality television, okay? At that time, nobody knew what reality television really was. Okay, it was a totally new venture. But anyway, I didn't know what the reality television was. I just barely had cable TV back then. Okay, made the tape up, them giant VHS tapes that you used to get, put it on top of my refrigerator, forgot about it.
For how long?
One day before the tape had to be to California.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So my daughter comes in, she goes, Dad, what'd you ever do with that tape? Did you mail it off? I go, no, it's on top of the refrigerator. I go, they're not going to want me. I go, it was just fun to do. We made a tape up. We had fun with it, okay? So she goes, you got to mail it in. So I go down to the post office, which is right down the street from my home. I go up to the lady, which I know because, small town. Well, not small town, but you knew lady in the post office. And she goes, George, the air money this to California, to get it there the next day, what you got to do, it's going to cost you like $15.65. Okay, you know what that meant? That was my beer and pizza money for that night.
Poor thing.
I turned around, walked out of the post office, and I go, I'm not mailing $15.65, and I'm just going to get my beer and get my pizza. I got to the door, walked outside, and I go, you know what? I've wasted $15.65 in so many other areas. I walked back in and I mailed it.
The way it went.
And the rest is all history because it all started with $15.65 that I wasn't going to mail.
And a VHS tape.
And a VHS
made in your
tape.
backyard.
All right, well, what I'm wondering, George,
Yes.
is it's no secret you like to be called Chicken George. Where does that name come from?
Okay. Keep in mind, I was on the first season of the CBS show Big Brother. First season ever. Nobody knew nothing about reality television. Leslie Moonves, the head of CBS, the network, wanted to branch out into new areas. Okay. I was on the show. I lived on a farm also. Okay. When I was younger, I lived on a farm. The Big Brother show back then wanted to go back to the old days of how people used to live. We had no washing machine. There was no outside contact, nothing. It was just 15 people in a house to see if they would go nuts, which some of them do, and everything else like this. I was on the show with a gentleman named William Mega Collins. Okay, this giant of a man, but a very nice man. And he goes, "Hey, George, since you know we had chickens in there, which was supposed to feed us, okay? That was supposed to be part of our meals and everything else like this." There, he goes, "You live on a farm, you take care of the chickens." They started calling me Chicken George.
That's how it started.
That's how, I mean, people think it's a real deep knowledge or something like that there. No, it's not. They just needed somebody to take care of the chickens, and that was it. Yeah, that was how all of it got started. And I took care of the chickens throughout the whole show, and the chickens, and we had a little dog and all that. That went to Bob Barker's farm. So after we were done with them, the Colonel didn't get them. Okay. But Bob Barker, they were happy to live out the rest of their life flapping their wings on Bob Barker's farm. Okay.
So let's finish off with a discussion of Big Brother. What was your experience like there? Was it fun? Was it frustrating? Was it difficult? Just what are your recollections of that whole experience?
Okay. I want people to really understand there was no outside contact whatsoever.
It was real that way.
It was real.
Okay.
It was real. Honestly, there was nothing. Okay. It was 14 people locked up on a house. No newspapers, no radio, no television. We didn't have a clock until halfway through the season. But since I worked outside all my life, see, I could kind of judge by the sun. Oh, yeah. So I go, I'd look up, it's about 4:15, 4:10, so I kind of knew what the time it was. But that was the concept, to see if you would, if you would crack up through the whole thing. And even today, if you watch a television show today, you'll see people as it goes down to the end. They really fall apart on it. And the ironic part about me, I made it all the way to the end twice and lost 2 times.
Well, no worse for the wear,
Yeah,
and thank
okay.
goodness for that now you got involved with Mecum. Let's take the transition from Big Brother to getting involved with Mecum Auctions. How did that start?
Okay, here's what ended up happening. I worked for the Tropicana Resort and Casino for quite some time. I also worked for the Rio World Series of Poker. Okay? What ended up happening was my family was still in Rockford, Illinois. But for what I wanted to do, because I realized my body physically could not do roofing anymore because, with the backs and everything else like this. And I kind of figured this is like a lot easier way to make money, okay, than doing that. I ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada, because in Las Vegas, Nevada, if you're starting out in the biz, so to speak, it's a very easy place to get work. I had an agent there. I would do commercials, but I also worked at the Trop, and I also worked at the Rio, okay? What ended up happening was CBS Television called me back, and they were going to do an All-Star edition, okay? What they were looking for was probably the most whacked out people they could find to come back and do it, okay? So they asked me to do it. They offered me a package that was more than fair. I ended up doing the show, and I was gone from my home for quite some time. And after the show, I go, you know what? It's time to go back home. So I packed my bags up from Vegas, Viva Las Vegas, okay, and I ended up back home in Rockford, Illinois. Well, what am I going to do in Rockford, Illinois? Okay. One thing I did know, though, my family on my wife's side has a car business, and I had always gone to the Greater Rockford Auto Auction. Okay, and I've loved auctions. I always have, because I've lived on a farm. That's what you do if you live on a farm. You go to auctions. Okay, I remember when auctions, they used to bring picnic baskets, and families and everything else like that used to sit there, and they would have it was like a giant little party for a day. Okay, but whatever. I ended up going back home, and I ended up going to the auction, and they were short a ring man. Well, I go, I really don't know quite how to do this, but I can watch and I can learn very quickly. Well, they were short a ring man one day, and I asked Mark Dizelle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lead auctioneer.
Yes. I owe him considerable amount. But anyway, I asked Mark Dizelle, I go, Mark, can I help you? And they ended up putting me in the Greater Rockford Auto Auction for 2 auctions because I was just a replacement. Okay? Temporary.
Got it.
But it was 2 auctions. And I go, wow, this is kind of cool to end up doing this. Okay, you sell cars, and everything else like this there. And once again, the person that had the job come back because they were ill with cancer, That was their spot. I was just a fill-in. But on my way out my door at the last auction, I go, Mark, if there's anything that I can do, please get a hold of me. Okay? I said, I am so thankful for what you did now, but if there's anything else you can do down the line, get a hold of me. About 2 months later, I get a phone call from him. He goes, hey, George, I got this job in Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay? He goes, would you be willing to help me? Well, you don't even need to ask me that, okay? You know, I have nothing. I have nothing going in Rockford, Illinois, okay, besides cutting the grass and whatever have you, okay? And I go, thank you. I'll gladly take it.
So you're a bidder's assistant, George. Give us some insight. What all does that entail?
Okay, here's what a bidder's assistant does. We are the communicator from the floor to the auctioneer. Okay, we are the mouthpiece that relays the bids onto the auctioneer. And what we are is this. We are the person that, I've always looked at it like this. There's no winners and there's no losers. There's always a middle. And that's what we really try and do here. Okay, if you have a customer that wants an automobile, you have a seller that wants to sell their automobile, okay? There's a middle ground where they can reach, where both parties walk away happy. And that is what my job is basically to do. Once again, to relay the bids up to the auctioneer, okay, but also to be talking to the customer. Sir, are you comfortable with your number that you're bidding right now? Because I do believe that is very, very important, especially if you're a new Mecum customer. You want to be talking to them all the time so they're familiar with the numbers, because it goes so fast and it's very rapid.
Yep.
So I really stress that with them. But once again, my philosophy is this: the middle ground works, and it works very, very well. You walk away with two happy people. And that's one thing that Mecum has really impressed with me too. We are all on the same page here, basically, when it comes to that. We reach the middle ground.
Now, a big part of how you do that is through the use of hand signals. George, clue us in, what role do they play in the bidding process?
Okay, when the hand goes up in the air, when you see a hand goes up in the air and it's made a fist, okay, that means that person standing right beside of you, the bidder, okay, is in the game. Okay? That's what that means. Okay, now once again, once that person gets bumped out, another bidder enters the player, okay, the hand comes down. Okay, now you walk over, you go over to the customer and you say, sir, would you be comfortable with another $1,000 more, another $2,500 more, or whatever have you? But also you're listening to the auctioneer, what the auctioneer is calling, okay? Because a lot of times we have to get to the reserve number for in order to make the deal work, and that's what we end up doing. I said, sir, we're not even at the reserve. Can you help us out here? Can we just progress the bid a little bit farther? They say yes. The hand goes back up again. Okay, and we're back in the game. Okay, that's basically all there is to it. But once again, my philosophy is this: I want to make sure that the customer knows exactly where they are at. I want to make sure they know the car that they're bidding on.
That it's the right car.
That is the right car.
Not the one in front of it or behind
Correct.
it. Got it.
Yeah, and I can, if I was a new customer especially, I would see, because it goes so rapidly. The car's coming up. The guy says, okay, I want to bid on this, but he's bidding on the wrong car. But we know to ask them people, sir, you're bidding on a 69 Camaro right up over here. Okay, are you correct on that there? And would they go on ahead? They proceed. The deal goes on. Yes, but the hand up in the air is the signal that we have this customer to my right or to my left is the person that has the bid at that time.
Got it. Now, we were talking before we jumped in the studio about one of your other passions, which is coin-op machines, including you stay pretty busy restoring them. How did all that come about?
Yes, that is correct. I'm a big fan of anything that is old and needs to be restored. I look at stuff like that I look at stuff that is like old and everything else like that, and I go, you know what? This can be brought back to new, brought back to life again. And it is so exciting when I find a piece. Years ago, I got into coin-operated kiddie rides, okay? The 25 centers. So what I do is I search them out. I take them back to my shop. And I'm in no hurry with them either. And I'll go through them, make sure that they run. I will repaint them, which I've learned how to do painting and everything else, like airbrushing. You'd be amazed at what you can learn on YouTube, okay? Yeah, YouTube is totally good. So I've gotten into the restoration business. But it's just there's nothing like taking something that nobody wants. And these old kiddie rides, people don't want them. They sit in a corner of a garage or in a warehouse or whatever have you. They sit there for years and years and years. Okay, so finally somebody could, well, I'm sick of sweeping around the doggone thing, or, we can put something else there. So I go on ahead, I will buy them, I will take them back, and sometimes it takes a very long time to restore these. Okay, and then what I end up doing after I get them all done, I bring them to Mecum auctions and I do sell them. Yes.
So how many have you done over the years?
I've probably done 25. Yes, yeah. But also I'm a big collector of auto memorabilia. I find it fascinating. Old gas cans, signs. I'm not very good at picking out the signs. You have to be careful with them in today's world because there's so many knockoffs and everything else like this. But I'm a big fan of auto memorabilia. I just think it looks so nice when you go into somebody's garage and they have, not only they have the cars, but they have these signs on the walls, the neons that are lighting, the vintage signs, the gas pumps, and everything else like this. It's just amazing because I know how much time it took for these people to do these collections also. And they put their heart and soul into this. And yes, that's what I love. I love doing it. How would you say? I'm a very blessed man. There's not many people that can sit in a chair and say, you know what? Mecum is the Super Bowl of auctions. We are.
Yep.
We are. We are it. And us team, that is when you see us walk out on there, we are a team. Okay? And I am so proud of, from when I first started at Mecum's to how this has grown, how this is built. Okay, our first time here in Kissimmee, Florida, where we're at, we were in this little building down the street. Okay, it's here in the fairgrounds, but whatever. We were in this little building, and look at what it's become. But the building got to be, I remember the first time I was here, I was jumping over people in the stands to take the bids because we were in this little bitty building, and there were so many people in there. So it was, it's just nice to see the progression that Mecum Auctions has come, and it's awesome to be a part of it, but to watch how it has grown to what it has become today. But also, I will tell you this, we have always kept the same philosophy. We treat, whether you're $1,000 bidder or you're $1 million bidder, we will treat you all the same.
Yep. Well said, George. Hey, before we send you back out to your duties on the auction floor, I'm just curious, how much of your time is split between the restoration that you talked about and the Mecum auction schedule, which for 2021 now has 12 auctions on the schedule?
I do it all fill in. Okay, whenever I'm off, I go back home. I will start working on my projects, and then I roll on to the next auction. Yes.
Well, Chicken George, it was so great for me to connect with you. I'd never had the chance to chat with you and to hear about your story. John, I really appreciate your time.
It's been my honor to be with you gentlemen. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. For more information, visit mecum.com. And join us again next time as we take you inside the world of muscle and collector cars and more.